A reading from the book of Exodus, chapter 32, verse 1 through 20. When the people became aware of Moses' delay in coming down from the mountain, they gathered around Aaron and said to him, "Come, make us a god who will be our leader. As for the man Moses who brought us out of the land of Egypt, we do not know what has happened to him." Aaron replied, "Have your wives and sons and daughters take off the gold earrings they are wearing and bring them to me." So all the people took off their earrings and brought them to Aaron, who accepted their offering and fashioned this gold with a graving tool, made a molten calf. Then they cried out, "This is your God, O Israel, who brought you out of the land of Egypt." On seeing this, Aaron built an altar before the calf and proclaimed, "Tomorrow is a feast of the Lord." Early the next day, the people offered holocausts and brought peace offerings. Then they sat down to eat and drink and rose up to revel. With that, the Lord said to Moses, "Go down at once to your people whom you brought out of the land of Egypt, for they have become depraved. They have soon turned aside from the way I pointed out to them, making for themselves a molten calf and worshiping it, sacrificing to it and crying out, 'This is your God, O Israel, who brought you out of the land of Egypt.' I see how stiff-necked this people is," continued the Lord to Moses. "Let me alone then, that my wrath may blaze up against them to consume them. Then I will make of you a great nation." But Moses implored the Lord his God, saying, "Why, O Lord, should your wrath blaze up against your own people, whom you brought out of the land of Egypt with such great power and with so strong a hand? Why should the Egyptians say, 'With evil intent he brought them out, that he might kill them in the mountains and exterminate them from the face of the earth'? Let your blazing wrath die down. Relent in punishing your people. Remember your servants, Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, and how you swore to them by your own self, saying, 'I will make your descendants as numerous as the stars in the sky, and all this land that I promised. I will give your descendants as their perpetual heritage.' So the Lord relented in the punishment that he had threatened to inflict on his people. Moses then turned and came down the mountain with the 2 tablets of the commandments in his hands, tablets that were written on both sides, front and back, tablets that were made by God, having inscriptions on them that were engraved by God himself. Now, when Joshua heard the noise of the people shouting, he said to Moses, 'That sounds like a battle in the camp.' But Moses answered, 'It does not sound like cries of victory, nor does it sound like cries of defeat. The sounds that I hear are cries of revelry.' As he drew near the camp, he saw the calf and the dancing. With that, Moses' wrath flared up, so that he threw the tablets down and broke them on the base of the mountain. Taking the calf they had made, he fused it in the fire, and then ground it down to powder, which he scattered on the water and made the Israelites drink." In this passage, we see the horror of how merely 40 days after having believed in God, after having spoken to God, after building a covenant with God, after just a few weeks from leaving the Red Sea in a miracle and seeing the plagues in Egypt and seeing the power of God appear as a pillar of fire, appear as a pillar of smoke, and descend down on this mountain so that the people could not even look at it. In the midst of all of this, the people turn to sin. And we see a reversal. First, you have the reversal of the people who are given gold by God. He makes their neighbors give them gold because of his power. They lose their gold. They take the gold off their ears, their bracelets. They were a people who were crowned with gold, and now they have lost this gold for this false god. You see a people who are going to sacrifice their cattle and their sheep to God. And here they are now sacrificing to a calf. There is a reversal. A God who is beyond images, and here they are worshiping God in an image. And these people were supposed to be made as numerous as the stars in the heaven or the sands in the seashore. But what happens? God says, I should wipe them out. And instead of having a covenant with them, I will have a covenant with you, Moses, you alone who have been faithful. But then Moses intercedes. He stands up as a mediator. Now, he does not offer his own life, as Jesus does, but he stands as a mediator. Now, it says that God gets angry. It says then that God repents. These are ways for us to try and understand how to talk about God. God cannot change his mind. God is of one mind. God is unchangeable. Why? Because he is God. People change our minds because we are not God, because we are simple, because we have bodies. But God does not change his mind. And so there is a testing of Moses, and Moses gets pretty close to the correct answer. He does not lay down his life, but he is willing to fight for the people. Please do not kill them all. Please do not kill them. Think about what other people would say. Then when Moses, he gets Joshua and they go down and they see this, and Moses destroys the tablets. He strikes them on the ground. And so he breaks this sign of the covenant, as God had wanted to do. But God had wanted to say Israel itself was the sign of the covenant. They are the people who have the law written in their hearts. But I want to destroy them because they have abandoned the law. Moses destroys the tablets themselves. Then we have another reversal. Moses, who had made the waters sweet through the prayers of God, now gives them their God to drink. And the water becomes bitter. This water that God had given them that had become sweet now becomes bitter because they are worshiping a false god. Finally, what we will see is that Moses will call together the Levites, and that they will go and start to kill people from the tribe. And what will happen is that these people who had been a people of kings, who had lost their crowns, who had been a people of prophets, who have lost their voice, were also a people of priests. And here they lose their priesthood. They lose their priesthood so that the priesthood is reserved to Moses, to Aaron, and to the Levites. When we follow God, when we accept God's love, we receive his love. But when we choose not to follow God, when we reject his love, we turn away from his love and bring upon ourselves curses rather than blessings.